You can't walk around dressed like that in this neighborhood. You don't get to speak to me like that." That was the moment Karen finally ran into someone who didn't automatically bow their head. For the first time, she faced resistance. Not that she absorbed any lesson from it. Even back when Susan and I were only dating, Karen had made her dislike obvious, from the very beginning. As president of the HOA, she wore that title like a crown, untouchable in her own mind, immune to criticism, intoxicated by authority that mostly existed in her imagination. There were days she'd act as if she didn't know who Susan was, deliberately making her sit at the neighborhood gate while guards shifted uncomfortably. She disguised the pettiness as following procedure, stretching out the wait just long enough to feel powerful. I would tell Susan to breathe through it, assuring her things would settle down once we were officially married. I couldn't have been more wrong. The second we said, "I do," Karen changed tactics. Suddenly, we were under a microscope. Fines fell like confetti at a parade. Warning letters piled up like veiled threats. Every interaction came with a sugary smile dipped in poison. Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe for your premium dose of HOA chaos. Marriage was supposed to bring calm, but Karen treated our home like it was under investigation. The trash bin was 2 inches out of place. The lawn looked, in her words, emotionally neglected. The wreath on our door was apparently confused about the season. Every violation notice arrived with visible satisfaction. Neighbors would quietly apologize in passing, too nervous to openly support us. Karen enjoyed making examples out of people. Susan responded with nothing but grace. Friendly hellos, warm waves, even compliments. Karen countered with icy stares and conveniently revised rules that seemed tailored specifically to us. It became clear this had nothing to do with rules. It was about dominance, public compliance, making us small in front of everyone else. Susan saw it too, though she refused to feed the drama. She chose composure over confrontation. Still, the tension thickened daily. Karen prowled HOA meetings like a prosecutor seeking her next headline. I paid attention, studying her habits, noticing her allies, memorizing her tone shifts, collecting moments the way someone gathers evidence. Karen thrived on intimidation. She expected us to cave, to apologize, to pay up quietly and blend back into obedient suburbia. Instead, we stayed courteous. We refused to pay anything unjustified. We kept records of every interaction, and we smiled. That smile unsettled her more than any argument ever could. You could feel something brewing, inevitable. Because people like Karen always push too far when calm defiance stands in their way. The red flags were already waving. But before we go further, tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this story reaches. The next HOA meeting felt orchestrated, like Karen had rehearsed every pause in front of a mirror. She stood behind the podium, lips pressed thin, scanning the room until her eyes locked onto Susan, and then me. Her tone shifted effortlessly from sweet to sharp as she announced a growing issue. Indecent attire threatening community standards. She didn't mention names, of course. She didn't have to. Her glare made the target obvious. She spoke about outsiders, declining morals and disrespect, saturating the room with judgment. Board members nodded stiffly but avoided looking at us. I felt Susan tense beside me, not afraid, just aware. She recognized a public setup unfolding in real time. Karen doubled down, promising consequences for anyone violating what she called community decency. She spoke of enforcement teams, surveillance. Penalties severe enough to restore respect. Some neighbors shifted uneasily. Others seemed entertained. I raised my hand and calmly asked for the written rule. Karen offered a tight smile and sidestepped the question. "Leadership requires flexibility," she said. Flexibility, meaning authority without boundaries. The meeting ended quickly. Her message delivered. Her target is chosen. Saturday morning came peacefully. Susan tied her running shoes and headed out for her usual jog. Same path, same steady pace. Same outfit she'd worn countless times over the years. Leggings, sports bra, headphones, confidence. Nothing obscene, nothing illegal. By noon, an email hit our inbox. $2,000. Indecent exposure. I actually laughed, assuming it was satire. Susan didn't. She read the message twice. Her jaw tightened. Anger carefully contained. We ignored it. Sunday brought another fine. Monday, 2 more. Tuesday, 1 before sunrise and another before dinner. Karen had turned penalties into a harvest, stacking them up like trophies. Each notice came wrapped in smug language, firm deadlines, and threats of liens against our home. We paid nothing. We documented everything, saved every email, sent copies to a lawyer friend. And we waited. Karen noticed immediately. Her patrols around our street increased. Her car lingered near our driveway. The performative smiles disappeared, replaced with restless irritation. She wasn't used to being ignored. She wanted obedience. She wanted us to be nervous. She wanted us to fold. What she got instead was quiet resolve, steady patience, and an audience that was finally paying attention. Friday came wrapped in heat and unease. Susan stepped outside just after sunrise, stretching near the curb before her run, unaware that Karen was already parked nearby, watching through her windshield like someone studying prey and routine. The moment Susan jogged past the row of mailboxes, Karen swung her car door open and marched forward, cutting her off with exaggerated indignation. A clipboard was gripped in her hand like it gave her rank. Curtains shifted along the street, a few phones subtly lifted. Karen demanded payment immediately, her voice sharp as she lectured about respect, authority, and the consequences of defiance. Susan paused, slipped one earbud out, and answered evenly. She violated no written rule. She wore nothing unlawful. She owed nothing. That calm response cracked something inside Karen. Her volume jumped, deliberately drawing more attention. She accused Susan of undermining families, eroding values, and ridiculing leadership. When Susan attempted to step around her and continue the run, Karen moved closer, declaring that the HOA had the right to confiscate violations. Then she reached forward toward Susan's top as casually as if she were grabbing produce at a store. The entire street seemed to hold its breath. Susan let out a short, disbelieving laugh and asked if Karen had completely lost it. She hadn't. Karen seized the fabric. Susan reacted instinctively, shoving her back just enough to create distance. It wasn't aggressive, it was defensive. Karen staggered, nearly losing her footing, embarrassment instantly mutating into fury. She lunged again, arms swinging wildly, shouting about police, bans, and permanent expulsion from the neighborhood. Susan's training kicked in. She blocked, redirected, pushed back. The struggle was messy but quick. Karen slipped once more while Susan kept her balance. When Karen reached yet again, Susan delivered a sharp, controlled strike, not vicious, just decisive. Karen hit the pavement hard. Her scream came immediately, theatrical and piercing, accusing Susan of assault while multiple neighbors recorded from different angles. Someone yelled for them to stop. Another neighbor let out an awkward laugh. Karen tried to stand, failed, and pointed furiously, promising lawsuits, arrests, and total ruin. Security showed up late, confused by the shouting and the sea of raised phones. Karen demanded that Susan be cuffed on the spot. Instead, the guards separated them and began reviewing footage right there on the sidewalk. Frame by frame, Karen's version of events collapsed. The reach, the grab, the first swing. Susan stood quietly, breathing steadily, hands visible, offering no dramatic defense. Karen, meanwhile, ranted with mascara streaking down her cheeks, her authority dissolving with every replay. The murmurs among neighbors grew louder, confidence visibly shifting away from her. Too late, Karen realized she had crossed a line that everyone could now see clearly, and worse, it was recorded. Permanently, her influence had always relied on silence. Silence no longer existed. She didn't calm down after that morning, she exploded. By evening, emails flooded inboxes accusing Susan of assault, defamation, moral corruption, and violations of bylaws no one could actually locate. She filed complaints rapidly, messy, aggressive, convinced fear would still do the trick. What she failed to understand was that each accusation invited more scrutiny. The hearing was scheduled swiftly after several residents submitted videos, written statements, timestamps, and neatly compiled copies of her messages. It was an avalanche of documentation. Karen arrived overdressed, seething, still clinging to performance. Susan arrived composed, organized, and accompanied by neighbors who had finally stopped whispering behind closed doors. Karen spoke first and unraveled herself. She contradicted her own written claims. She invented regulations mid-sentence. She blamed video manipulation, for clips that clearly showed her initiating contact. As the footage played, slowed down, zoomed in, impossible to dispute, the board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Her expression flickered from outrage to disbelief to something dangerously close to panic. The mediator had to pause twice to settle the room. When Susan spoke, it was brief and direct. No insults. No theatrics, just facts, boundaries, and evidence. The contrast said everything. The ruling came down firmly. Karen's lawsuit was dismissed on the spot. A counterfinding labeled her behavior harassment, abuse of authority, and physical misconduct. All fines were voided. Karen was ordered to pay damages, attend anger management, and step down from her position pending a full ethics investigation. When the resignation requirement was read aloud, audible gasps filled the room. Karen shot to her feet, shouting about conspiracies and betrayal before storming out, heels slipping slightly as she went. The crown she imagined wearing had shattered. Outside, no one looked away this time. Phones lowered. Silence followed her down the walkway. The neighborhood adjusted quickly. The HOA issued formal apologies, publicly revised policies, and opened new elections. Susan returned to her morning runs without interference, greeted with smiles, encouragement, and respect. Karen's name became a quiet warning shared during meetings, a reminder that unchecked power eventually devours itself. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It showed up through documentation, replay, and consequence, and watching accountability replace fear felt far more satisfying than revenge ever could. The end.